Chicago was stirring slowly on this October morning. A crisp wind, the kind locals called the hawk, swept through the canyons between skyscrapers. The early sun fought its way through a blanket of low clouds clinging to the top of the Willis Tower, casting long, dramatic shadows across Daley Plaza. Naomi Carter emerged from the bustling Clark Lake L station, clutching a leather portfolio in one hand and a steaming Starbucks cup in the other. 30 years old, Naomi had spent the last 5 years as an executive assistant at Orion Capital Group, one of the largest real estate development firms in the Midwest. Every day, she followed the same path to the gleaming Ethel-red tower on Wacker Drive, riding the express elevator to the company's headquarters on the 25th floor. Today, however, was different. A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. Late last night, she'd received an email from her boss, Mark Reynolds, the CEO of Orion. The message was brief and clinical. "Important meeting with international investors tomorrow at 9. Be ready. We'll go over the details beforehand." Naomi quickened her pace. It was 8:30, leaving her only half an hour to prepare for the mysterious meeting. She pushed through the revolving glass doors of the tower, gave a curt nod to the security guard, and rode the elevator to the 25th floor. The office was already a hive of activity. The finance team was scrambling to finalize quarterly reports. Marketing was hashing out a new campaign for a luxury condo development in the West Loop, and the legal team had spread a mountain of documents across a large conference table. "Hey, Naomi," Kimberly, the receptionist, called out. "Mark's waiting for you in his office. He seems pretty on edge." "Thanks for the heads up," Naomi replied, setting down her portfolio and heading toward Mark's office. She knocked softly on the glass door. A sharp "come in" echoed from within, and she entered the spacious corner office, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the Chicago Loop. Mark Reynolds, a 46-year-old CEO with dark hair just beginning to show silver at the temples, was standing by the window, speaking on his phone. He was a tall, lean man, always dressed to perfection. Today, he wore a navy suit that Naomi knew had been custom-tailored by a renowned shop on the Magnificent Mile. "Yes, Mr. Kamamoto, I'm confirming our 9 o'clock meeting," Mark said into the phone. "Of course, all the documents will be ready." "Yes, I'll see you then." He hung up and turned to Naomi, his face a mask of stress and determination. "Naomi, good. You're here. We don't have much time," he said, gesturing to a seat at the small conference table in the corner of his office. "In less than 30 minutes, we're meeting with a delegation from the Japanese Kamamoto Corporation. This could be the biggest deal in our company's history." Naomi sat, pulling out a notepad. "What kind of numbers are we talking about?" she asked. "All business." $250 million, Mark answered, sitting across from her. "They want to invest in the construction of a mixed-use office and residential complex on that big parcel we acquired in the South Loop. This project could completely change Orion's position in the American market." Naomi jotted down the figure, trying not to show her surprise. It was a staggering sum. "What's my role in the meeting?" she asked. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I need you for support. You'll take notes, but you might also have to clarify certain points. I know your English is impeccable." "Yes, but if they're Japanese investors, shouldn't we have a professional interpreter?" Naomi suggested. "Mr. Kamamoto speaks fluent English, so that shouldn't be an issue," Mark replied. "But there's another complication." Mark opened a desk drawer and pulled out a thick file. "Late last night, we received a counter-proposal from the Arabian Sovereign Fund. They're offering $300 million for the same project. The problem is, the documents are in Arabic and our legal department hasn't had time to translate them yet." He placed the file in front of Naomi. Elegant Arabic script adorned the cover. "What do you want me to do with this?" Naomi asked, looking at the incomprehensible text. "For now, nothing," Mark said. "But we have to be prepared. If the Japanese start to negotiate hard on the terms, we can use this offer as leverage. I need you to have these documents with you during the meeting, just in case." Naomi nodded, though she felt a growing sense of unease. She didn't know a word of Arabic, so she had no idea what the documents contained. Using them as a bargaining chip without knowing their contents seemed incredibly risky. "The meeting is in the main boardroom," Mark continued. "Our executive board will be there, the Japanese delegation, and several lawyers. I also expect Andrew Sterling to make an appearance." Naomi raised her eyebrows. Andrew Sterling was the founder and chairman of Orion Capital Group, but he rarely showed up at the office. The 58-year-old billionaire spent most of his time abroad, managing his vast international business empire. "Mr. Sterling is coming in just for this meeting?" she asked. "He is," Mark confirmed. "That shows you how important this deal is. Sterling and Kamamoto have known each other for years, but their relationship is complicated. They're rivals in multiple markets." Naomi nodded, taking in all the information. She sensed there was more to this meeting than Mark was telling her, but she didn't press. Her job was to support her boss and be as prepared as possible. "All right," she said finally. "I'll be ready." The clock on the office wall showed 8:45. There wasn't much time left. "Is there anything else I should know?" Naomi asked, standing up. Mark hesitated for a moment. "Yes, be very careful what you say. Sterling has been exceptionally unpredictable lately. He has a reputation for testing his employees' loyalty and competence at the most unexpected times." "What does that mean exactly?" Naomi frowned. "You'll see," Mark said enigmatically. "Let's go. We should be in the boardroom before they arrive." They left the office and walked down the hallway toward the main boardroom, passing hurried employees. Naomi could feel her heart begin to race. Whatever was about to happen in this meeting, she had a feeling it would be one of the most important days of her career. The main boardroom of Orion Capital Group was on the top floor of the Ethelred Tower, the 26th. The vast room was enclosed on three sides by glass walls, offering a spectacular, vertigo-inducing view of the Chicago skyline. On a clear day, you could see far beyond the city limits, but this morning a light mist shrouded the tops of the tallest buildings, lending the cityscape a mysterious air. A long, oval table made of dark mahogany dominated the center of the room, surrounded by 20 ergonomic chairs upholstered in black leather. Minimalist paintings of abstract geometric shapes, all by well-known contemporary American artists, adorned the walls. In one corner stood a marble pedestal bearing a polished bronze sculpture of an eagle, the company's logo. Naomi entered the room with Mark and immediately got to work. She arranged elegant folders with materials for the attendees on the table, checked that the audio-visual system was functioning correctly, and made sure the sideboard was stocked with bottled water, coffee, tea, and light snacks. "Double-check the presentation," Mark instructed, looking over his own notes. "Everything has to be perfect." Naomi walked over to the laptop connected to the projector and opened the presentation file. She quickly clicked through the slides, ensuring there were no typos. The presentation detailed the investment plan, architectural renderings of the mixed-use complex, a construction timeline, financial analysis, and projected returns on investment. Just as she was finishing her review of the last slide, the boardroom doors swung open. Naomi turned to see a man walk in. She recognized him instantly, though she had only seen him in person a handful of times. Andrew Sterling, the founder and chairman of Orion Capital Group, stood in the doorway, surveying the room. He was a tall, well-built man in his late 50s, with graying hair, slicked back and piercing gray eyes. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that, as Naomi knew from office gossip, cost more than her salary for 3 months. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," Mark said, approaching him with an outstretched hand. "Mark," Sterling replied curtly, shaking his hand. His voice was low and commanding. "Is everything ready?" "Yes, we're prepared," Mark assured him. "This is Naomi Carter, my executive assistant. She'll be supporting us during the meeting." Sterling's gaze shifted to Naomi, and he studied her with an unnerving intensity. She felt as if she were being scanned. She tried to maintain a professional expression, though a nervous flutter had started in her chest. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sterling," she said, extending her hand. Sterling shook it, his eyes still fixed on hers. "Mark has mentioned you," he said. "He claims you're exceptionally competent." "I do my best," Naomi replied, feeling her cheeks flush under his intense scrutiny. "We'll see," Sterling muttered, turning back to Mark. "Kamamoto is bringing his son and 2 advisors. They want to close this deal as quickly as possible." "That's good news," Mark said. "Our legal analyses are complete and the financial terms are settled." Sterling nodded, but his expression remained grave. "Kamamoto is a tough negotiator. He won't be swayed by easy promises. Besides," he added, lowering his voice, "he's not happy that we're speaking with the Arabs at the same time." Naomi, who was pouring water into glasses, froze for a second. So Sterling knew about the other offer. She wondered if this was part of some larger strategy. "How did he find out about that?" Mark asked, clearly taken aback. Sterling offered a slight smile, but it was a cold one that didn't reach his eyes. "Kamamoto has his sources, just as I have mine within his organization," he replied. "Business isn't just about numbers, Mark. It's about information." Suddenly, Kimberly, the receptionist, entered the room, looking slightly flustered. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but the Japanese delegation just got on the elevator. They'll be here in 1 minute." "Thank you, Kimberly," Mark said, straightening his tie. "We're ready." The woman nodded and left. Sterling took a seat at the head of the table, assuming the role of host. Mark sat to his right, and Naomi, as instructed, took a seat slightly behind them at a smaller table, from where she could observe and take notes. A minute later, the boardroom doors opened again, and an elderly Japanese man entered, accompanied by 3 others. A younger man with similar features, who must have been his son, and 2 other Japanese men in impeccably tailored suits. "Hiroshi!" Sterling exclaimed, rising to his feet and extending his arms in a welcoming gesture. "How wonderful to see you again." Hiroshi Kamamoto, chairman of the Kamamoto Corporation, was a short, slender man in his 60s. He had closely cropped grey hair and intelligent eyes behind thin, titanium-framed glasses. Despite his age, he moved with the energy of a much younger man. "Andrew," he replied, in English with a slight accent, bowing slightly before shaking Sterling's hand. "It's been too long." "I agree," Sterling said. "Allow me to introduce my CEO, Mark Reynolds, who has been leading the negotiations with your team." Mark shook hands with Kamamoto. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Kamamoto," he said. "I've heard a great deal about your impressive accomplishments." Kamamoto nodded his thanks and gestured to his companions. "This is my son, Takeshi," he introduced the younger man, "and my advisors, Kenji Tanaka, our CFO, and Yuki Sato, our legal counsel." They all exchanged polite bows and handshakes. Naomi noticed that the younger Kamamoto, Takeshi, looked at her for a moment with interest. He seemed to be about her age, maybe a little older. He wore a modern, slim-fit suit and stylish glasses. Unlike his father, he exuded a certain nonchalance. "Please, let's have a seat," Sterling offered, gesturing to the chairs. Everyone sat down around the table. Naomi discreetly powered on her tablet, ready to take notes. From her corner, she had a clear view of all the participants. "Before we begin our formal discussions," Sterling said, "may I offer you some coffee or tea?" "Green tea, please, if you have it," the elder Kamamoto replied. Naomi immediately stood to prepare the beverages for their guests. As she poured the tea into elegant cups, she could hear Sterling and Kamamoto exchanging pleasantries, reminiscing about past meetings in Tokyo and Singapore. By the time she returned with the tray, the conversation had shifted to business. "We are very impressed with your proposal," Kamamoto was saying. "Chicago is a growing market with enormous potential." "That's true," Sterling agreed. "And the parcel in the South Loop is one of the last large investment opportunities so close to the city center. In 5 years, the value of that property will at least double." Mark turned on the projector and began the presentation. In a professional tone, he went through the slides, presenting the project's details, market analysis, and financial forecasts. Naomi took notes while observing the reactions of their Japanese guests. The elder Kamamoto listened intently, nodding from time to time. His son seemed less interested in the presentation. He glanced at his smartwatch several times and whispered a few words to the lawyer. Naomi wondered if that was a good sign. After the presentation, Mark turned the floor over to the lawyers from both sides, who began to discuss the finer points of the agreement. The discussion was held mostly in English, with a few asides in Japanese between the members of the Kamamoto delegation. Suddenly, Sterling cut through the legal jargon. "I believe we should get to the heart of the matter," he said, looking directly at Hiroshi Kamamoto. "We both know that time is money. You're prepared to invest $250 million in this project. We're prepared to accept your offer. What's stopping us from signing the deal today?" A silence fell over the room. Hiroshi Kamamoto adjusted his glasses and looked at Sterling with an unreadable expression. "I appreciate your directness, Andrew," he said after a moment. "But we also both know that in business the devil is in the details. And besides," he paused, "I've been informed that we are in something of a race." Sterling raised an eyebrow. "A race?" "Yes," Kamamoto confirmed. "With investors from the Middle East. I'm told they are offering more." Naomi felt her heart skip a beat. The Arab offer wasn't supposed to come up. She glanced at Mark, who looked surprised but quickly composed himself. "We are in discussions with various potential investors," Mark admitted diplomatically. "It's standard procedure for a project of this scale." "Of course," Kamamoto agreed. "But we agreed to a strategic partnership, not an auction." Sterling leaned forward over the table. "Hiroshi, I've known you for 20 years. You know that I value long-term business relationships more than one-time profits. But as chairman of Orion, I have a duty to consider all options." "I understand," Kamamoto replied. "In that case, perhaps you should tell us what the competition's offer is, so we know what we're up against." At that moment, Sterling unexpectedly turned toward Naomi. "Ms. Carter," he said loudly, "please present the main points of the Arabian offer." Naomi froze. She was not prepared for this command. All she knew was that the offer was for $300 million, but she had no details because the documents were in Arabic. "Mr. Sterling," she began cautiously, "I don't. The documents are in your portfolio, are they not?" Sterling interrupted. "Please, present them." Naomi felt every eye in the room turn to her. With trembling hands, she opened her portfolio and took out the thick file written in Arabic. She had no idea what it contained, beyond the single piece of information Mark had given her. "The offer is for $300 million, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But I don't know the specific terms, as the documents are in Arabic and have not yet been translated." "In Arabic?" Sterling feigned surprise, though Naomi was certain he knew this perfectly well. "That's no problem. Please read them." Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, but I don't speak Arabic," she replied, feeling a rising tide of panic. Sterling looked at her with an expression of deep disappointment. "A pity," he said. "I thought my people were better prepared for international negotiations. Perhaps then one of our Japanese friends can assist." He looked at the Kamamoto delegation. "Does anyone here speak Arabic?" Hiroshi Kamamoto shook his head, clearly displeased with this turn of events. "Unfortunately, no," he answered coolly. Mark tried to salvage the situation. "Mr. Sterling, we can have our legal department prepare an expedited translation." But Sterling ignored him, his eyes still fixed on Naomi. "Ms. Carter, are you certain you can't even give us a cursory translation of these documents?" he pressed. "This is important for our negotiations." Naomi felt her cheeks burn with shame and embarrassment. She knew Sterling was deliberately putting her in an awkward position, but she didn't understand why. Was this a test? Was he trying to humiliate her in front of the Japanese investors? She looked down at the documents again, searching for any fragment she might understand. On one page, she noticed a table with numbers and a few words written in the Latin alphabet, most likely proper nouns. "I can only confirm that the financial offer is for $300 million, she repeated. "The other conditions." Suddenly, Takeshi Kamamoto, Hiroshi's son, interrupted her, holding out his hand. "May I see those documents?" he asked. Naomi looked questioningly at Mark, who gave a slight nod. She passed the file to the young Japanese man. Takeshi spent several minutes leafing through the pages in complete silence. His face betrayed no emotion. Finally, he placed the papers back on the table and looked at his father. "This is not a legitimate offer," he said in English, then switched to Japanese, saying something Naomi couldn't understand. Hiroshi Kamamoto listened to his son with growing interest. After a moment, he turned to Sterling. "My son claims the Arabian offer contains several legal traps. Are you aware of this?" Sterling looked surprised. He glanced at Mark, who also seemed bewildered. "What kind of traps?" Sterling asked. Instead of answering, Takeshi unexpectedly addressed Naomi. "Ms. Carter, could you come over here, please?" he requested. Surprised, Naomi stood and walked to the table. Takeshi pointed to a paragraph in the Arabic document. "This states that the Arabian Sovereign Fund reserves the right to withdraw from the agreement within 3 years without financial penalty if the return on investment is lower than 8% per annum," he said. "That effectively nullifies the guarantees you're offering." Naomi stared at him, shocked. "How did he know that? Did he speak Arabic? Are you sure?" she asked quietly. Takeshi nodded, then pointed to another section. "And this clause gives them the right of first refusal on all of Orion's future projects in North America for the next 10 years. You would essentially be tying your own hands for a decade." A heavy silence filled the room. Sterling looked at the young Japanese man with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "How do you know Arabic, Takeshi?" he finally asked. Takeshi smiled faintly. "I don't," he replied, "but I do know Japanese." Sterling frowned. "What does that have to do with—" "These documents aren't in Arabic," Takeshi interrupted him. "They're in Japanese, written using the Arabic script. It's an old intelligence trick, using one alphabet to write words in another language. Someone went to great lengths to make this look like an Arabic document, but it's Japanese, and very poor Japanese, by the way." The entire room was stunned into silence. Naomi felt her legs go weak. What was happening? Why would the documents be written in Japanese disguised as Arabic? Hiroshi Kamamoto stood up, his face a mask of profound indignation. "Is this some kind of test, Andrew?" he asked in an icy tone. "Are you trying to see if we will fall for this primitive trap?" Sterling also stood, looking genuinely shocked. "Hiroshi, I swear, I have no idea what you're talking about. The Arabian Sovereign Fund sent us these documents. If they are indeed forgeries—" "They are," Takeshi cut in firmly, "and they were written by someone with inside knowledge of our company. They mention internal project code names that no outsider would know." Naomi glanced at Mark, looking for an explanation, but her boss looked as stunned as everyone else. Hiroshi Kamamoto gathered his belongings and gestured for his team to stand. "I believe this meeting is over," he said, buttoning his jacket. "I did not expect such a lack of respect from you, Andrew." "Hiroshi, please!" Sterling extended a hand in a pleading gesture. "This must be a misunderstanding. I would never knowingly try to deceive you." But Kamamoto was already heading for the door. He paused for only a moment beside Naomi. "You are not to blame for this, young lady," he said quietly, "but you should be careful who you work for." After the Japanese delegation had left, a heavy silence descended on the room. Sterling stood by the table, staring at the documents lying before him. His face was pale with rage. "What the hell was that?" he finally snarled, slamming his fist on the table. "Who fed us these documents?" Mark struggled to remain calm. "Mr. Sterling will look into it immediately. We need to contact the Arabian Fund." "There is no Arabian Fund," Sterling cut him off. "This was sabotage. Someone deliberately tried to torpedo our negotiations with Kamamoto." Naomi stood motionless, trying to process what had just happened. Who could have created fake documents? And why use Japanese written in the Arabic alphabet? It was too elaborate for simple corporate sabotage. Sterling suddenly turned to her. "Ms. Carter, who provided these documents?" he asked sharply. "I don't know, Mr. Sterling," she answered honestly. "I received them this morning from Mr. Reynolds." All eyes turned to Mark, who had gone pale. "I got them last night by email," he said defensively. "The sender was Ahmed Al-Farsi, a representative of the Arabian Sovereign Fund. Everything looked legitimate." "Check the email," Sterling commanded. "Now." Mark quickly pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his inbox. After a moment, a look of consternation crossed his face. "The email is gone," he said. "It's not in my inbox or my trash." Sterling clenched his fists. "Someone is sabotaging us from the inside," he said quietly, but with such intensity that a shiver ran down Naomi's spine. "And I swear, I will find out who it is, even if I have to fire every single person in this company." He turned and strode toward the exit. At the door, he paused. "Reynolds, Carter, my office. Now." As the door closed behind him, Naomi looked at Mark. Her boss looked as though he had just seen a ghost. "What just happened?" she asked quietly. Mark shook his head. "I have no idea," he replied. "But whatever it was, we just lost a $250 million deal, and I suspect our heads will be the next to roll." He gathered his things and gestured for Naomi to follow him. As they left the boardroom, Naomi felt she had just been dragged into something far bigger and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Andrew Sterling's office occupied the entire northeast corner of the 26th floor. In stark contrast to the minimalist modern decor of the rest of the office, this room was furnished in a more classical, almost old-fashioned style. The walls were paneled with dark wood, and a Persian rug in deep shades of burgundy and navy covered the floor. Heavy drapes were pulled back, revealing the panoramic view of Chicago. A massive ebony desk sat on a raised platform, so that Sterling, seated behind it, towered over anyone who stood before him. The shelves behind the desk were lined with books, mostly biographies of great entrepreneurs and politicians, along with classic works on economics and philosophy. Naomi and Mark stood before the desk as Sterling paced the office like a caged tiger. The silence stretched on, heightening the tension. Finally, the billionaire stopped at the window, staring out at the city. "I spent 20 years building this company," he said quietly, more to himself than to them. 20 years building a reputation, trust, international contacts, and one meeting was all it took to put all of that in jeopardy. He spun around abruptly. "What exactly do you know about those documents?" he asked sharply. "And don't try to lie to me. My patience has run out." Mark swallowed hard. "Mr. Sterling, as I said, I received them last night by email. The sender identified himself as Ahmed Al-Farsi from the Arabian Sovereign Fund. He claimed he was interested in investing in the South Loop project and was offering $300 million. "Did you verify this, Al-Farsi?" Sterling interrupted. "I didn't have time," Mark admitted. "The email came in late, and the meeting with the Japanese was the priority. I was planning to deal with the Arabian offer after we concluded negotiations with Kamamoto." Sterling snorted in disbelief. "So you accepted an offer worth $300 million from someone you didn't even vet, and you used it as a bargaining chip in negotiations with a long-standing business partner." Mark remained silent, clearly ashamed. Naomi felt she should say something, but she wasn't sure it was the right time. Sterling shifted his gaze to her. "And you, Ms. Carter? What do you know about this?" Naomi stood up straight. "I only learned about the Arabian offer this morning from Mr. Reynolds," she answered calmly. "I didn't see the email, nor did I have any contact with the supposed Arabian fund. My role was limited to holding the documents during the meeting." Sterling studied her for a moment, as if judging her sincerity. "What was your assessment of the young Kamamoto's behavior?" he asked unexpectedly. "Did he seem particularly interested in you?" Naomi frowned, surprised by the question. I noticed him looking at me a few times during the meeting, but I interpreted it as general curiosity, she answered cautiously. I don't think he showed any particular interest in me personally. And when he asked you for the documents? Did that seem planned to you? Naomi thought for a moment. Now that I think about it, yes, it could have been planned. He reacted too quickly, too confidently. As if he knew what he was looking for, Sterling nodded, as if his own suspicions had just been confirmed. Because he did know, he said quietly. It was a setup, and I'm afraid we walked right into it. He went to his desk, opened a drawer, and took out a tablet. After a few moments of swiping, he turned the screen toward them. Do you recognize this man? On the screen was a photo of a young Asian man in a suit sitting at the bar of a luxury hotel. Though his hair was different and he wasn't wearing the fashionable glasses, Naomi immediately recognized Takeshi Kamamoto. That's Mr. Kamamoto's son, she said. But he looks different than he did today. This photo was taken 2 months ago at the Marriott, Sterling explained. And the man next to him? Naomi looked closely at the second man in the photo. With a jolt of shock, she recognized Robert Langley, the head of Orion Capital Group's legal department. That's Robert Langley, our chief counsel, she said, a sense of dread washing over her. But what is he doing with Takeshi Kamamoto? Exactly, Sterling muttered. What is our chief legal counsel doing in a private meeting with the son of a key investor 2 months before critical negotiations? Mark looked equally stunned. Mr. Sterling, are you suggesting that Langley and the young Kamamoto— I'm not suggesting anything yet, Sterling cut him off, but Langley has access to all our trade secrets. He knows our negotiation strategies, our weak points, our concession limits. If he were working with the Japanese, it would be catastrophic, Mark finished. But why would he do it? Sterling shrugged. Money, revenge, ambition. There could be any number of motives. Langley applied for the CEO position 3 years ago when I hired you, Mark. Perhaps he still holds a grudge. Naomi listened to the exchange with growing unease. She knew Robert Langley, a serious, diligent lawyer who had been with the company for 20 years. She found it hard to believe he would sabotage negotiations. But if Langley is working with the Japanese, she spoke up, why would they torpedo their own offer? It doesn't make sense. Sterling looked at her with a hint of approval. A good question, Ms. Carter. And that is the most disturbing part of this puzzle, because if the Japanese deliberately scuttled the negotiations, it means the game is about something much bigger than this one project. Silence fell as all three tried to comprehend what had just happened. Finally, Sterling made a decision. We need to act quickly, he said. Mark, get Langley in my office. Tell him it's urgent, but don't mention the meeting with the Japanese. I want to talk to him before he has a chance to cover his tracks. Mark nodded and left the office. Naomi was left alone with Sterling, which made her feel even more uncomfortable. The billionaire was watching her thoughtfully. Ms. Carter, he began after a moment. You've worked for Mark for 5 years, correct? Yes, Mr. Sterling, she confirmed. And you're loyal to this company? Of course, she answered without hesitation. Sterling nodded as if considering something. I need someone I can trust, he said finally. Someone who is definitely not involved in this conspiracy. And I think you might be that person. Naomi felt a mix of surprise and alarm. Me? But why me? Because if Langley is indeed working with the Japanese, he's likely not acting alone, Sterling explained. He has contacts on the board, friends in high places. Right now, I don't know who I can trust. But you barely know me, Naomi pointed out. True, Sterling agreed. But I saw how you behaved during the meeting today. You were as surprised by Takeshi's discovery as I was. That wasn't a feigned shock. Naomi didn't know what to say. Sterling walked over to the bar in the corner of the office and poured himself a glass of whiskey. Care for one? He asked, holding up the bottle. No, thank you, Naomi declined. It's only noon. Sterling smiled faintly. Sensible, he said, setting the bottle down. That's another reason I think I can trust you. He took a sip of whiskey and returned to his desk. "I need your help, Ms. Carter," he said directly. "I want you to conduct a small investigation, unofficially." "An investigation?" Naomi repeated in disbelief. "But I'm not a detective. I'm just an assistant." "That's precisely why you're perfect for the job," Sterling explained. "No one will suspect an assistant of conducting an investigation. Besides, you have access to a great deal of information, calendars, emails, documents, and you know most of the senior staff personally." Naomi tried to process the proposition. On one hand, she felt honored by the chairman's trust. On the other, the prospect of spying on her colleagues felt deeply uncomfortable. "What exactly would you expect from me?" she asked cautiously. "I want you to look into Langley's contacts with the Japanese," Sterling replied. "Check his emails, his phone records, his meetings. I need proof that he collaborated with Kamemoto against us." "But isn't that illegal?" Naomi objected. "I can't just go through someone's private emails." Sterling waved his hand dismissively. "All company emails are corporate property. As chairman, I have full access to them. I'll grant you the necessary permissions." Naomi still had doubts, but before she could voice them, the office door opened and Mark walked in, followed by Robert Langley. The chief counsel looked nervous, which was unusual for his normally composed demeanor. He was a slender man in his 50s, with thinning hair and a sharp gaze behind thin, metal-framed glasses. "You wanted to see me, Andrew?" he asked, ignoring Naomi's presence. Sterling gestured to a chair. "Yes, Robert. We have a problem that requires your legal expertise." Langley sat down, looking tense. Naomi noticed his hands were trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie. "What kind of problem?" he asked, trying to sound neutral. Sterling was silent for a moment, staring at him intensely. Finally, he picked up the tablet and showed him the photo of his meeting with Takeshi Kamemoto. "Perhaps you can start by explaining this," he said coldly. Langley's face went white. For a moment he looked like he was about to deny it, but he quickly composed himself. "That was a private meeting," he replied, "unrelated to the company. A private meeting with the son of our key investor, 2 months before a $250 million negotiation." Sterling raised an eyebrow. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" Langley swallowed hard. "It's not what you think, Andrew. And what is it that I think, Robert?" Sterling leaned over the desk. "I think you've been feeding confidential information to the Japanese. I think you sabotaged our negotiations with Kamemoto. And I think you were the one who created those fake Arabic documents that led to the deal collapsing." "What?" Langley looked genuinely shocked. "What documents? What are you talking about?" Sterling watched him closely for a moment, as if assessing his reaction. "The meeting with Kamemoto was a disaster," he said finally, "because someone supplied us with forged documents, supposedly from the Arabian Sovereign Fund, which turned out to be written in Japanese but disguised with Arabic script. Takeshi Kamemoto exposed the fraud, and his father broke off negotiations." Langley looked genuinely bewildered. "But that makes no sense. Why would the Japanese sabotage their own offer?" "That's what I'd like to know," Sterling replied, "and I think you can explain it to me." Langley shook his head. "I swear, Andrew, I have nothing to do with this. Yes, I met with Takeshi Kamemoto, but for a completely different reason." "Which was?" Langley hesitated, glancing at Mark and Naomi. "I'd prefer to discuss this in private," he said. "They stay," Sterling cut him off. "Talk." Langley sighed heavily. "Takeshi contacted me 2 months ago. He said he had information about a conspiracy within the Kamemoto Corporation. Apparently, several senior directors were planning to sabotage the South Loop project because they felt his father was overpaying. Takeshi disagreed with them and wanted to warn us." "And why would he do that?" Sterling asked skeptically. "Because Takeshi has his own ambitions," Langley explained. "He wants to take over the company from his father. But he has rivals among the directors. He believes a partnership with Orion will strengthen his position. That's why he was so invested in seeing the deal signed." Sterling listened intently, but his expression remained skeptical. "Even if that's true, it doesn't explain what happened today. If Takeshi wanted the deal to be signed, why would he expose the fake documents and cause the negotiations to collapse? I don't know, Langley admitted. It's as much a mystery to me as it is to you. The last time I spoke with him was a week ago, and every indication was that he wanted to finalize the agreement. Naomi listened to the exchange with growing apprehension. If Langley was telling the truth, the situation was even more complex than it seemed. What if the father and son aren't as aligned as we think? She suggested suddenly. Maybe Takeshi is acting on his own, against his father's wishes. All eyes turned to her. Sterling frowned, considering the possibility. That's an interesting theory, Ms. Carter, he said finally, but it doesn't explain who created the fake documents and why. Maybe Takeshi created them himself, Naomi continued, feeling she might be onto something important. Maybe he wanted to break off the negotiations, but in a way that would make his father blame us, not him. Langley nodded in appreciation. That makes sense. Takeshi has always had a complicated relationship with his father. Hiroshi is a traditionalist, deeply committed to Japanese business values. Loyalty, respect, long-term relationships. Takeshi is more modern, more ruthless. But what would be his goal, Mark asked. What would he gain by sabotaging this deal? Langley shrugged. It's hard to say. Maybe he has a different plan for his father's company. Maybe he's negotiating with our competition. Or maybe... He was cut off by the sound of Sterling's phone. The billionaire answered, listening for a moment with an increasingly grim expression. I understand, he said finally. Track it and keep me updated. He hung up and looked at the others. That was Mike, from our cybersecurity division, he said. Someone just tried to hack into our system. The digital trail leads to Japan. Mark, Langley and Naomi exchanged worried glances. Did they steal any data? Mark asked. We don't know yet, Sterling replied. It is still analyzing it, but they were trying to access our plans for the project near Glenview. Glenview? Langley looked surprised. But we were negotiating the South Loop project. Exactly, Sterling said slowly, which means this is about something else entirely. Naomi remembered something she had heard from a colleague in the real estate division. The Glenview site has strategic importance, doesn't it? She asked. It's adjacent to a former military base? Sterling looked at her with surprise. Yes, but how do you know that? That project is top secret. I heard something from Annabelle in real estate, Naomi explained. She mentioned we were negotiating some permits with the Department of Defense. Sterling and Langley exchanged a meaningful look. That would explain the Japanese interest, the lawyer said slowly. Glenview isn't just another residential development. It's part of a larger infrastructure project related to national security. Precisely, Sterling confirmed. And if Takeshi Kamamoto is trying to take control of that project... He trailed off, his face etched with deep concern. This isn't just about business anymore, Mark finished. This could be a matter of national security. Naomi felt her mind racing, trying to connect all the pieces of the puzzle. But where do the fake Arabic documents fit in? She asked. If the goal was to kill the negotiations, why didn't Takeshi just do it openly? Because he wanted us to look like unreliable partners, Sterling answered. He wanted his father to lose faith in us. And the best way to do that was to make us look like con artists, trying to manipulate the Japanese with phony offers. That's clever, Mark admitted, but risky. What would have happened if we'd actually had an Arabic translator at the meeting? It was unlikely, Langley noted. Takeshi must have known we don't have an expert like that on staff. And even if we had hired an outside contractor, an Arabic interpreter probably wouldn't have recognized Japanese words written in the Arabic alphabet. Sterling suddenly slammed his fist on his desk. Enough theories. We need facts, he said firmly. Robert, contact Takeshi. Act like you suspect nothing and try to get out of him what this is all about. Langley nodded. And I, Sterling continued, turning to Mark, will contact Hiroshi personally. I've known him for years. Maybe I can salvage this situation. Mark also nodded. Sterling's gaze fell on Naomi. And you, Ms. Carter, will handle the internal investigation, as we discussed. I want to know who else might be involved in this conspiracy." Naomi hesitated. "Mr. Sterling, I'm still not sure I'm the right person for this." Sterling looked at her sharply. "You're the only person I can trust right now," he said. "Besides, you have something the others don't." "What's that?" she asked, surprised. "Instinct," Sterling replied. "You made the connection between the hacking attempt and the Glenview project. That's not a coincidence. You have an eye for detail and know how to connect the dots. That's what we need right now." Naomi felt her cheeks flush at the unexpected compliment. She wasn't used to praise from someone so high up. "I'll do my best," she said finally. "Excellent." Sterling stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "From now on we move. Mark, Robert, I want daily reports. Ms. Carter, you will report directly to me. Here is my personal number." He handed her a business card with a phone number handwritten on it. "Call me any time, day or night, if you find something significant." As they left the office, Naomi felt a mix of excitement and fear. She'd been suddenly promoted from executive assistant to the chairman's private investigator. She didn't know where this investigation would lead, but she had a feeling she was about to uncover far more than anyone expected. In the hallway, Mark stopped her for a moment. "Be careful, Naomi," he said quietly. "You've just stepped into something very serious." "I didn't have a choice," she replied. "Sterling didn't give me the option to refuse." "I know," Mark admitted. "But remember, not everyone is who they seem, not even Sterling." Before she could ask what he meant, Mark walked away toward his office, leaving her with an even greater sense of unease and more questions than ever. Naomi spent the rest of the day carefully combing through company archives and databases. With the new level of access Sterling had granted her, she could now view emails and documents that had previously been beyond her reach. Hiding in a small, empty conference room to avoid prying eyes, she reviewed Langley's communications from the past few months. Most of the emails concerned routine legal matters, contracts, permits, opinions. But several messages exchanged with a foreign address, takamoto@privatemail.com, caught her eye. They were short, cryptic messages, without signatures, often containing only dates and times, most likely meeting arrangements. The ring of her phone startled her. An unknown number, Naomi Carter. "Ms. Carter," a familiar voice with a slight accent said. "This is Takeshi Kamamoto. We need to talk." Naomi froze. How did he get her number? "How did you get my number?" she asked, trying to sound calm. "That's not important," Takeshi replied. "What is important is that you are in the middle of a very dangerous game. I need to meet with you. Alone." "Why would I meet with you?" she asked cautiously. "After you torpedoed our negotiations?" "Not everything is as it seems," he answered. "If you want to know the truth about Sterling and the Glenview project, meet me at Lincoln Park at 6 o'clock. I'll be waiting by the lily pool." He hung up before she could reply. Naomi sat motionless for a moment, weighing her options. Should she inform Sterling about the call? Or should she meet with Takeshi herself and find out what this was all about? After a moment of hesitation, she chose a third option. She called Mark. "Takeshi Kamamoto just called me," she said without preamble. "He wants to meet me at Lincoln Park at 6. "What?" Mark was clearly shocked. "What does he want from you?" "He says he knows the truth about Sterling and the Glenview project," she replied. "He's implying I'm in danger." Silence on the other end of the line. "Mark?" she asked. "Go to the meeting," he said finally. "But you won't be alone. I'll be watching from a distance." "Do you think it could be a trap?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But it's our chance to find out what's really going on." At 6 o'clock, Naomi was walking near the Alfred Caldwell Lily Pool in Lincoln Park. The October afternoon was fading into evening, and the park was slowly emptying. In the distance, she spotted Mark, pretending to read a newspaper on a bench. "Miss Carter," she heard a voice behind her. Takeshi Kamamoto stood a few feet away, wearing a dark coat with the collar turned up. He looked different than he had at the meeting, more serious, less confident. "Thank you for coming," he said, stepping closer. "What is this all about?" she asked directly. "Why did you sabotage the negotiations?" Takeshi glanced around nervously. "Not here," he said quietly. "Follow me." He led her down a path deeper into the park, away from the main walkways. When they reached a secluded spot, he stopped. "I have to warn you," he said in a serious tone. "The South Loop project is just a cover. The real prize is Glenview and what's located there." "What is located there?" she asked, her heart pounding. "An old military base is hiding a secret research and development facility," he replied. "Sterling isn't building a residential complex. He's building a center for a private organization that's developing a highly advanced AI. Naomi felt a cold shiver. "How do you know this?" "My father has been conducting his own investigation," Takeshi explained. "Initially, he just wanted to invest in the South Loop, but when his people dug deeper, they discovered connections between Sterling and this organization. I tried to warn Langley, but..." He broke off as the snap of a twig echoed from behind the trees. "Someone's here," he said, grabbing Naomi's arm. "We have to..." He never finished. A figure emerged from the shadows of the trees. "I see you've already had time to spin your fairy tales, Takeshi," Andrew Sterling said, holding a small pistol aimed directly at them. Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. Behind Sterling stood Mark, a look of pained guilt on his face. "I'm sorry, Naomi," he said quietly. "I had to tell him." "You were always too curious, Takeshi," Sterling continued, "just like your father. But your little investigation ends now." "What do you want?" Naomi asked, trying to control the tremor in her voice. "Initially, I just wanted you to help me find the traitor in my company," Sterling answered. "But now that you know too much, I'm afraid I have no choice." Suddenly, several figures emerged from the bushes, surrounding them in a tight circle. Naomi recognized Robert Langley among them with a sickening feeling. "You too?" she whispered. Langley looked at her, his face impassive. "Business isn't just about numbers, Miss Carter," he said, repeating Sterling's earlier words. "It's about information and controlling it." "What now?" Takeshi asked, stepping in front of Naomi protectively. "Now," Sterling smiled, a chilling, humorless expression, "I show you what's really at Glenview." A black, armored SUV sped through the empty streets of Chicago. Behind the wheel sat a silent, military-looking man. Sterling was in the passenger seat, and in the back, Naomi was squeezed between Takeshi and Mark. Langley followed in a second car. Naomi tried to stay calm, but fear was a tight knot in her throat. She glanced at Takeshi, who sat motionless, his face an unreadable mask. Only the white of his knuckles betrayed his tension. "Where are you taking us?" Naomi finally asked, breaking the heavy silence. Sterling turned, looking over his shoulder at her. "To Glenview, as I said," he replied calmly. "Since you're both so interested in what I'm building there, I decided to satisfy your curiosity." "And then what?" Takeshi asked. Sterling smiled enigmatically. "Then we'll see. That depends on you." The SUV turned off the main road onto a narrow, poorly lit street, then onto an even narrower gravel road bordered by a high metal fence. At the end of the road was a massive gate with a guard post. The guard saluted at the sight of Sterling and opened the gate. They entered an area that looked like a construction site. Heavy machinery, shipping containers, and piles of building materials were everywhere. But Naomi noticed that the activity was concentrated around a large, concrete bunker, partially built into the ground. The SUV stopped in front of the bunker's entrance. The driver opened the doors and motioned for them to get out. The second car pulled up, and Langley joined them. "Follow me," Sterling said, walking toward a set of heavy steel doors. He placed his palm on a biometric scanner, then entered a long code on a keypad. The doors hissed open, revealing a sterile white corridor lit by fluorescent lights. "This doesn't look like a residential construction site," Takeshi observed as they walked inside. "Because it isn't," Sterling admitted, "at least not in the traditional sense." He led them down a long hallway, past several laboratories with glass walls. Inside, scientists in white lab coats worked on complex equipment. Naomi saw the Orion Capital Group logo on some documents, but next to it was another logo, a stylized Sigma symbol inside a circle. Sigma, Sterling said, noticing her gaze, the organization funding this research. What kind of research? Naomi asked. Instead of answering, Sterling stopped at another door and entered a code. The door slid open to reveal a spacious room that resembled a mission control center. Large screens covered the walls, and dozens of technicians sat at consoles. The largest screen displayed a three-dimensional model of the globe, with complex data streams flowing between continents. "Welcome to Project Prometheus," Sterling said with a note of pride. "The most advanced research project into predictive AI and global market analysis in the world." Naomi and Takeshi exchanged surprised glances. "I thought this was about illegal experiments," Takeshi said. "Biological weapons or something." Sterling laughed. "Biological weapons, really?" He shook his head. "Your intelligence must be worse than I thought." He walked over to a technician who handed him a tablet. Sterling reviewed the data for a moment before turning back to them. "What we're doing here is completely legal. Difficult, controversial, yes, but legal. We are developing an artificial intelligence capable of predicting and influencing geopolitical and economic events with unparalleled accuracy." "Why?" Naomi asked. "Imagine a world without market crashes," Sterling said, his eyes gleaming. "A world where humanitarian crises can be predicted and averted. A world where economic stability isn't a dream, but a calculated reality. That is the future, Ms. Carter, and we are building it." "If it's legal, why all the secrecy?" Takeshi pressed. "Why the cover of a residential development?" Sterling sighed. "For two reasons. First, competition. Tech firms and foreign governments would kill to get their hands on this technology. If they knew how far we've come, they would do anything to steal our data. Second, public opinion. People fear what they don't understand. The moment you talk about an AI that can influence global markets, they scream about rogue computers and corporate overlords." "And aren't they right?" Takeshi challenged. "Isn't this about control?" Sterling looked at him sharply. "Control is a tool. The question is who wields it, and for what purpose. I intend to wield it to create a better, more stable world." He gestured to the main screen. "Prometheus is almost complete, but it needs a guiding hand. A human element to provide context, ethics, and strategic direction. That is where I come in." Naomi felt a growing sense of dread. This wasn't about philanthropy, it was about power. Absolute power. "Why are you showing us all this?" she asked. We are your opponents." Sterling smiled broadly. "Opponents? No, Ms. Carter. You are potential allies." He looked at Takeshi. "Your father, Hiroshi, has been my rival for years. But you, Takeshi, are different. You're a visionary, more open to unconventional solutions." "What are you suggesting?" Takeshi asked. "A partnership," Sterling replied. "A real partnership, not that superficial deal for the South Loop. Kamamoto Corporation has access to Asian markets we can't penetrate, and advanced microchip manufacturing we need. Together, we could rule the global economy." Takeshi looked intrigued but wary. "My father would never agree to this after what happened today." "Your father doesn't need to know," Sterling said. "Not at first. You would bring him around in time." Naomi watched them, feeling like a pawn in a terrifying game. "And what if we refuse?" she asked. Sterling's smile vanished. "After what you've seen, do you really think I can just let you walk away?" Suddenly, there was a commotion in the hallway. Shouts, the sound of a struggle. The doors to the control room burst open and several armed men in black tactical gear rushed in. Behind them walked an older Japanese man with a grim face. Hiroshi Kamamoto. "Father." Takeshi looked completely stunned. Hiroshi ignored his son, his eyes locked on Sterling. "Andrew," he said coldly. Did you forget that I have my own sources inside your organization? We've been tracking your every move for months." Sterling didn't look frightened. Instead, he simply nodded. "I expected you, Hiroshi. You were always predictable." He tapped a command into the tablet he was holding. "But you're too late." Red lights began to flash throughout the facility, and a loud alarm blared. A heavy blast door began to descend over the entrance to the control room. "Lockdown!" one of Kamamoto's men shouted. "He's escaping!" another yelled. Sterling calmly walked toward a panel on the far wall, which slid open to reveal a hidden elevator. "This isn't over, Hiroshi," he shouted over the alarm. "Prometheus is already decentralized. You can't stop what's coming." He stepped into the elevator, and the doors slid shut just as Hiroshi's men reached it. They were trapped. Mark and Langley, who had been standing by, made a move to follow Sterling, but Kamamoto's men quickly subdued them. As the blast door sealed them in, Hiroshi walked over to the main console, his face a mixture of fury and grim determination. "He's gone," he said, "and he's taken the most dangerous weapon in the world with him." At that moment, the main screen flickered, and Sterling's face appeared. He was smiling. "Welcome to the new era," his voice echoed from the speakers. "An era where the global economy runs on my terms." Naomi stared at the screen, her understanding of the world completely shattered. The man who had been her boss was now a fugitive with the power to bring nations to their knees, and she was standing in the very heart of the storm. 3 months later, Naomi sat in a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue, watching the city life through the window. The winter morning was bright and frigid, the sun glinting off the snow-covered rooftops. On the table in front of her, her open laptop displayed a Financial Times headline: "Orion Capital and Kamamoto Corporation announce landmark tech partnership. Markets react with euphoria." Naomi smiled bitterly. The world of business moved on as if nothing had happened, as if one of the richest men in America hadn't vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving only a digital ghost behind. The official story, circulated by Orion's new leadership, headed by a government-appointed receiver after Mark Reynolds and Robert Langley were arrested, was that Sterling had retired for health reasons. Unofficially, rumors swirled of his death, his defection to a rival nation, or even his kidnapping. Only a handful of people knew the truth: Naomi, Hiroshi, and Takeshi Kamamoto, and a small circle of government agents. And even they weren't sure of the full extent of the threat Sterling now posed. The coffee shop door opened, and Takeshi Kamamoto walked in. Dressed in an elegant dark coat, he scanned the room, spotted Naomi, and walked to her table. "Good morning, Ms. Carter," he said, taking off his coat and sitting opposite her. "Good morning, Mr. Kamamoto," she replied. Punctual as always, Takeshi smiled faintly. "A Japanese trait," he said. "Hard to shake, even living in Chicago." A waitress came to their table, and Takeshi ordered a green tea. When she left, he glanced at Naomi's laptop. "I see you're following our progress." "It's hard not to," she replied. "You're on the front page of every business journal." Historic partnership, technological breakthrough, a new era in US-Japan relations, impressive headlines. "Too impressive," Takeshi admitted. "I'd prefer less publicity, but my father insists on building a positive public image." "And Project Prometheus?" Naomi asked, lowering her voice. "Is it contained?" Takeshi looked around discreetly. "For now," he confirmed. "My father is working with your government. Strict security protocols are in place. We're trying to hunt Sterling's digital footprint, but he's good. He covers his tracks." "Is he still active?" Takeshi sighed. "We see whispers of his influence, minor unexplained fluctuations in the market, suspicious political donations through shell corporations. He's testing the system, learning its limits. He's playing a long game." Naomi shivered, thinking of Sterling's chilling smile on the screen before he vanished. "What happens now?" she asked. "For now, we monitor and prepare. We're building our own countermeasures. But that's not why I asked you to meet me," he said. "I wanted to talk about your future." My future? Naomi raised her eyebrows. Yes. How are you finding your new role at Orion? After the truth about Sterling was revealed to the authorities, Naomi had been extensively debriefed. As a reward for her cooperation and to keep her close, she was promoted to Director of Corporate Communications. It's fine, she answered. A big change, but I'm managing. I'm glad. Takeshi nodded. But I have another offer for you. Something more ambitious. I'm listening. We're establishing a new joint task force as part of our partnership, he explained. The Department of Technological Ethics and Oversight. We need someone to lead it, someone who will ensure that a weapon like Prometheus is never built in secret again. Someone with the courage to say no, even when everyone else is saying yes. I think you would be perfect for the position. Naomi was stunned. Me? But I have no background in ethics or technology. You have something more important, Takeshi replied. Experience. You were there. You saw how ambition can corrupt and how technology can be twisted. You have a moral compass that pointed true when others lost their way. Naomi thought about it. The offer was unexpected, but intriguing. What exactly would this department do? She asked. Oversee all advanced research projects within our partnership, Takeshi explained. Assess their ethical, social, and legal implications. Create the rules and procedures to ensure that technology serves humanity, not the other way around. He paused, then added quietly, and help us hunt Sterling. Naomi felt a chill run down her spine. You think he's still a threat? I know he is, Takeshi said frankly, and that's why we need someone like you, someone who will ask the hard questions and won't settle for easy answers. Naomi was silent for a long moment. Part of her just wanted to forget, to go back to a normal life. But a stronger part knew she couldn't turn away from this responsibility. How long do I have to decide? She asked finally. A week, Takeshi replied, but the sooner the better. The game is already in motion, she nodded. I'll think about it. Excellent. Takeshi smiled. Now, if you'll allow me, I'd like to buy you lunch. There are a few more things to discuss, and besides, he hesitated, I'd like to get to know you better, outside of a professional context. Naomi looked at him surprised. Was he asking her out? She hesitated for a moment, then remembered how he had stood protectively in front of her in the park. I'd like that, she answered with a smile. As they were leaving the coffee shop, Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Choose wisely. I'm watching. She quickly slipped the phone into her pocket without showing Takeshi. Some things were best kept to herself. For now, stepping out into the cold Chicago air, Naomi knew that whatever she chose, her life would never be the same. She was part of something bigger now, a story that was just beginning, and somewhere out there, in the vast, invisible network of the world, Andrew Sterling was watching, waiting, and planning. Unlike him, however, she would never forget that technology must serve humanity, not the other way around. And as long as she remembered that, the future, however uncertain, still had a chance to be human.